Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with Kansas City jazz pianist and composer Eddie Moore. We discussed in detail his newest 2016 CD, Kings and Queens, which is a very fluid soundscape and worth some worldwide attention. Eddie got into depth about this album, the motivating forces behind it, his education, the current KC scene, and so much more. This is our second go-around with the great Eddie Moore, and it just keeps getting richer each time. So please, dig this interview, my friends.
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm wonderful. Thanks for taking some time out. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
And thank you for sending over the album. I love it, man. It's a great album.
I appreciate it. I'm glad you like it.
I mean, it's such a... There's so much going on. I mean, the sound of it is so crisp. The whole thing's really nice. There's a lot of sonic textures that are going on that are just... I mean, there's a lot of vibes that go up, and then there's some mellow vibes. There's a nice little sonic soundscape going on, so I really dug it quite a bit.
I appreciate it. We're trying some things different.
It's cool, man. Totally cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out here and kind of generically before we get to Kings and Queens and just ask you, activity-wise, et cetera, what's going on with you lately?
A lot. Of course, the album just came out. We have a lot of performances coming up. Really getting prepared for the album release party, which will be October the 1st, and really trying to get on the road in the new year. That's my main goal, tour, bring Kansas City music to people all over, really. And I'm doing a lot of writing and a lot of teaching.
Right on. Where are you teaching at?
I'm out at Culture House in Olathe. Sorry, I just dropped the phone.
Oh,
and
okay.
then I'm the jazz adjunct piano teacher at Penn Valley, which I'm super stoked about. It should be fun.
So let's go ahead and get into Kings and Queens. Talk to me about who you brought along to make this album with.
I wanted to keep, I'd say the main form of the group, although it's changed now, but at that time, kind of the same from the Live in Kansas City album from our 10-year Green Lady, and wanted to take that group and get in the studio. So Pat Adams on drums, and DeAndre Manning on bass with Adam Schlossman on guitar, and I'm on piano and Rhodes.
Take me into the studio and how this album was made. What was the vibe? What was the conversation musically? How do you feel about how this album was made in the studio?
We spent a lot of time recording, a couple sessions recording it. We were trying out different things. I definitely wanted to do it when it came to deciding where we wanted to record. I definitely wanted to try it out at Weights and Measures. I had listened to a couple projects Dwayne Trower has done, and I've been spending a lot of time with Dwayne and other groups and other sessions. I know that Dominique Sanders recorded a lot of his album there, a lot of the live stuff, and I really like the way that sounded sonically, and that's kind of the whole thing with us is not getting so much of a jazz sound with our recording. And so that's why we picked Weights and Measures. The way the studio is set up, too, it's extremely great. The line of sight is really cool, and you can see everyone while they're in ISO booths, and the vibe is really cool. I mean, if you've been there, then, you walk through a flower shop, and it smells awesome, and then you go, the studio's in the back of a floral shop.
Wow.
And Dwayne's got a lot of vintage gear, homemade pedals, and just different things because he's kind of an electrician as well as an engineer. And it was cool. It was a really good environment. He knows what he's doing. And like I said, we weren't going for the typical jazz sound. I wanted something sonically wider. And I think Dwayne is the master in that, considering he probably spends most of his time recording, a lot of other genres that want that same sound, with a lot of grit. All of that is pretty much on Rhodes. Like I said, we took a couple sessions we've done at different times. And so, he had a Mark I Fender Rhodes in there with a full cab, and we ran everything as live as I could. I didn't run the keyboards direct and all that stuff, On a Memory of You, I'm actually playing Rhodes through a Vox AC30 and just mic'd it. None of that effect stuff is off board. It's real time. The delay and stuff is in real time. He had a a custom delay pedal that he built, and I was just like, oh man, I've been using this. And at the time, in the time of us recording the album, all my gear was stolen, and
Wow.
so it was great. You know, I was looking for, you know, I was experimenting with different setups just from playing with various Blonde and Project H and 77 and some of the reggae bands back in Mufasa. I completely changed my setup when I had the opportunity to buy new gear. I bought completely different things that I had been playing with over the last 10 years from the influences of those groups. And when we went into the studio, I went with that for Dwayne. He had like everything I wanted. It was great. I liked it a lot. And like I said, we were experimenting on a lot of different things to kind of grab the sound that you were talking about.
Yeah, it's the one thing that just, and it might be partly because if there's any instrument that I'm keyed into that I can actually play decently, it's the drums. Those drums were just popping out of that recording like crazy.
Okay, and that's a lot of Pat Adams. Pat is a gear master. I don't think a lot of drummers are like, you know, gear nuts. Of course, there's so many different timbres and textures for percussion. And so Pat had, you know, his set in there with his stuff, and I told him to bring what he wanted, and then we sat down, and me, Dominique, and Dwayne sat down to get the mix that we wanted. I took it over to Craig Lindsay in Kansas to master at his place, and the way that he hears music and likes to hear it sound, and he just put the finishing touch on it that made it sound really heavy and thick. And so with the combination of Dwayne, Dominique, and Craig Lindsay, just grabbed that sound. And I enjoy the drums too. I really enjoy the way Adam's guitar sounds. That's kind of a new sound for him and how we've been playing in the last year.
Now, if you could have one wish or a wish or two for the listener of this album to get what you want them to get out of it, what do you wish that the listener gets out of this album?
Ooh. I don't know. I spent so much time thinking about the music and just kind of putting it there. I guess the same thing as I want the listener to get when they hear us live, like, you know, not to put, you know, hopefully we're getting the listeners that don't put themselves on a box. Like, it's totally jazz music. I kind of like hate that word, but it's jazz music, but it's just music. And so hopefully the listener gets a chance to sit down and actually, like, you know, I think it sounds better on CD. And just listen and relax and go on the journeys with us. You know, it's kind of that. Like outside, and I mean, it's not outside the box music, but just kind of taking that away from the project. Like, man, I just like the way this groove is, or this melody, the way that it cycles, or, you know, just finding little key nuggets that they can tie into and, you know, forget about their problems and have a better day, honestly. Kings and Queens is like, the suite is more of like an education piece where, you know, I purposely incorporating certain African musical nuggets to build the pieces, and it has the most meaning. Well, not the most, but the most meaning out of any of the songs I've wrote. That's why it's 3 pieces, and so it incorporates those things. And so hopefully just to get their mind rolling on, you know, the current issues that are going on in America and around the world when it comes to the treatment of African American people and the true history, and especially being in America with how infused the music is with the culture and not just jazz. Like, that trickles down to like all American music. And so that's why it opens up with the opening track opens the way it does, and the drums hit first, and then it's a multi-metered into a swing, into like this road-soaked, you know, neo-soul kind of Herbie Headhunters type of piece at the end, you know. And so hopefully the listener can take all those things away from it.
You know, all of the artwork on there has that kind of Egyptian old world kind of vibe. So what's the meaning behind the title of the album, and what does the artwork mean?
The meaning of the title is, you know, same as the title tracks. It's, you know, we come from Kings and Queens, from having conversations with friends and peers. I feel like a lot of people don't know that and have forgotten, especially, I mean, it's kind of like a crazy time right now. Like, I'm 30 and I'm experiencing the same thing that my parents were going through almost in civil rights movement, like 50 years ago, over 50 years ago. That it's like, man, you just look around and you think about it and it's like, what happened? Like, and that's why I picked, like an old world feel, a real feel. Like, you see, every time you see Africans portrayed, it's not in their real historic true light. It's changed. It's altered. And I don't want to answer and say why I think that is, but yet it's not happening. And so I wanted to portray the kings and the queens the way that they were. And so that cover is an Egyptian Egyptian papyrus that's authentic. Frank William Miller, the artist, he did some things and he did his thing on it. But that's the whole thing and the vibe of the project. Like, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's like real history and it's true history. And so if we're not gonna, if you don't want to repeat history, we need to be educated. And so that's kind of the title, like the whole presence of we come from kings and queens, and just reminding all people, like, know your true history, know where you come from, have pride in that,
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing that's always struck me about your music is I never have thought you're like straight up jazz. You are jazz, but I also am a big fan of like the indie music scene. I think there's so much talent out there, and I think that the kind of the vibe that's going on with some epicenters in New York is that they're really incorporating different levels. And I mean, you got soul, there's some funk, there's a lot of action going on. You know what I'm saying? So the thing that I think is cool, I guess this is my question. I always try to get kind of a temperature of what's going on in the modern jazz scene. It seems like there's a good fusion of genres, and we're kind of blurring the lines and maybe getting away from that term jazz that you said you don't like. Do you think that might be what you do as a musician?
Oh, man, I mean, that's totally the essence and where my soul is. Like, I didn't even come to, like, I grew up, and we've talked previously, in a previous interview before, and that's kind of like my background. Like, growing up in Houston where I grew up, I was into other music. Like, I totally didn't play jazz till I was, like, 18. And so then I got into it from my love for hip-hop. And as a pianist, like, I played piano. I just couldn't play, the music that I wanted. And so when I came to jazz and the guys that I was around, like, that's just how jazz was, And you say, oh, we're trying to get away from the word. And it's like, I feel like the forward-thinking jazz musicians from, like, even the 40s and the 50s were trying to get away from that word. Like, I've read certain texts that it's like, we don't like to be called this. We don't believe in this word. It doesn't mean anything. And that's a bigger, conversation on its own. And there's a lot of different opinions that go with that. But, I mean, even the guys that I love, like Miles Davis and Keith Jarrett and, Herbie and Jason Moran and even Thelonious Monk, and it's not about the genre. It's just about the art of improvisation and the history in the art of improvisation. And it's interesting being in Kansas City because it is home of the swing and it is very nostalgic. And you mentioned New York and these other places, and it's like I think they just get that concept and have been getting that concept of the music for a long time. And that kind of brings me to back to okay, well, how do I sit in that? And it's like, I'm probably one of the few keyboardists that floats the jazz scene heavily, but is also playing on the indie rock scene. I play 2 reggae bands. I run a hip-hop jam session. I play hip-hop. I'm on hip-hop tracks. And so that might be different for KC, but that's not different for any other keyboardist in LA or New York, Chicago, France, Japan. That's just the way it is. You bring other music to your jazz. You know what I mean?
Totally.
I bring all that to my jazz because the jazz is just the improvisation. Now, when I go to improvise, you'll know I'm a jazz musician. Why? Because I'm moved to Kansas City to learn how to play jazz and to learn the depth of that conversation and improvisation. So I think just depending geographically where you are and how they've been thinking about the music there, because I listen to you take a guy like Gerald Clayton in the Trio album, Bond? He's very much a jazz piano trio. And in a sense, it's very much traditional piano trio, but then it's not.
Yeah.
compositions, the sound, the way that he's playing, the instrumentation. And so, like I said, we bring our musical influences into the jazz, I feel. And that's something that's been going on, like, way before I was even born.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, it's kind of like Charlie Parker, that quote in Paseo, you are going to come out of your horn, and what you're saying is you are going to come out of your piano and the mix of instruments and everything that you are. I mean, in essence, who you are is going to come out in your music, and that's 100% right there.
Right. Exactly.
But speaking of who you are, I'm going to go back a little bit here and ask about your education at UMKC. How did they shape you as a musician there?
I think it's how they didn't shape me or how I refused to be shaped. Honestly, I'm kind of like, when it came to school, it was like this kind of like rebel mentality kind of dude. And so, like, I didn't want to take the classical lessons that I was supposed to be required to take the first year. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. And it's Dan and Bobby that were like, oh, cool, we'll get you out of it. They also let me have a piano trio as a class where I started playing with Dominic Sanders and Ryan Lee. And I'd never played trio, but the fact that he was like, yeah, sure, you want to play trio? I'll open up a class, and then these guys can get credit, and they can sign up. And you can just do what you want. I'll put you on the combo concert, too. Like, just go, you know what I mean? So it's, like, kind of like the fact that, like, no one was like, do this one thing, or you need to be doing this. They just kind of, like, said, do what you're going to do and have this freedom. The grade will come from the potency in the music, I felt. They both kind of came at it like that. I was also doing grad school, so the program was a little bit different. And then being in the city, you get opportunity to play all the time and kind of see where you want to go with that. So the MKC was great for that. And, even playing in their combos and big bands, like Dan Thomas is really big on writing original music in combo. Not just doing arrangements of standards, but like literally bringing in tunes that you're writing. And then he's like, really get this down because we're going to go in the studio and record this just to work on that. And you can have it, And so that's kind of how the freedom of expression came out. We recorded that at UMKC. I had a lot of the guys that I've been playing with in the city and in school on that.
How did the members and that musical nexus of the Outer Circle come together?
It's changed a lot too. So it originally came together from like the school thing, like guys that I've been playing with and who were down for the cause, and it just kind of keeps rotating like that. The group has changed a lot of different members, but it's always like the guys that I'm playing with and just have the best vibe that are down to play with me, and all the things that it requires to actually be in a group. Every musician in KC is great, but that's kind of how it is. I've probably been, in this band currently, I've probably been playing with the guitarist Adam the longest. We met at a jam session. There was a time where I needed a guitar because the main one was moving on to other projects, and Adam was the best fit. We've grown a lot in how we play together and the sound of the guitar. Like now he's playing a solid body Telecaster with the pedal setup, which when we met and were playing at Green Lady and doing our regular things, that wasn't the case. And so just the fact that, he's open to experiment with what I'm thinking about for the sound of the band, and we can have fun in that and kind of experiment, just like how they've told me, how about you maybe get off piano and buy a Moog or a synth board, you know what I mean? So
sure,
dudes that I have a good time with, a good vibe with, and that are down to practice and rehearse and be in a band. I met DeAndre randomly at the Foundation. We were playing Jelly's the Beaner by Robert Glasper, kicking it and having fun. And he walked up on stage, picked up the bass, not knowing the song, and just started playing it with us. And then I knew, oh, wow, okay, you're special. Okay, let's exchange numbers. And then we just had this great vibe, and I've been playing with him ever since. And he never ceases to amaze me with, the musical ability or ideas. We just played trio with Brandon Draper, and it's our first time all playing together, and I was just like, man, this is crazy. And so it's kind of that thing. Whoever we meet, it's always about guys that I meet and just have a good time. I think for my band specifically, I'm trying to have a group, and so that takes more responsibility. You're not just a sideman, like
Sure.
this is a band, and so right now that's kind of the thing, like locking that down, and the guys are there, and I'm glad to have them on the album. I'm glad to have contributions from more members of the group. DeAndre wrote a piece, Adam wrote a piece. My lifelong good friend of mine, Daniel Robinson, who lives in Texas now, wrote 2 pieces, saxophone. And, it's a very diverse and well-rounded, and I listen to it, it's like all different because it's not just my personality, it's more members speaking out. And I like that.
So how do all these musicians come together to define the voice that you have as your ensemble?
By writing. Like, I would push them to write and put music on the project. I don't know. I feel like most great band leaders do that. Especially, I always refer to Miles because I grew up with his music all my life. And, Second Quintet, it's like a lot of Wayne Shorter's music, some Herbie's on there. It's not all Miles, actually, on some of them. Miles maybe didn't write a piece. But it's on, you know what I mean? Like that whole vibe. And so they shape the music by just coming together and sharing their personalities. Like, I don't think the group is just what Eddie Moore wants or, what I want. It's like, what do we want, y'all? Like, we're playing together, like, write something, you know what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely. Speaking of writing, what are your inspirations when you write and compose?
Lately, it's just been life. The things that I experience in day-to-day activities or, like, relationships with people or, with Kings and Queens, it was like, I'll just take the album for example. Like, Kings and Queens, it was a conversation I was having with some friends about just what's going on in America. I wrote that one after, the whole deal with Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, and, me and Matt Leifer were in Costa Rica at the time of, when the incident with Michael Brown happened, and, like, we were watching that third person, like, from a third perspective, from the world news. And it was crazy that was happening in St. Louis, and we were like, oh, man, we're here from Kansas City, and, like, people are asking us about, they would ask us about this because it was, like, going on, and it was a big deal. And so Kings and Queens comes from that. The LBC, I was on tour with Barry's Blonde last year, and we met a really great crew in Long Beach, California, had a really good time. And just that whole vibe of what I was there to do as a keyboardist, and it's very Ike Owens influence, keyboarder for Mars Volta and Jack White, and that whole, like, kind of rock feel, and I was, they had a really good vibe. I actually wrote that one at this record porch party's house, like, early in the morning, everyone's asleep, and just stuff like that. With, I think, Time Now for DeAndre was just kind of like the same thing, like, what's going on? Like, what are we experiencing? Like, how can we express our thoughts and feelings? It's a lot of different things. You could sit down and write a piece and be like, oh, I want to do this and this and this, let's do it. And you write it out, or just things that happen to me and things that I see that I want to share with people that I might not just want to speak about. So music kind of does it.
Yeah, so are you always thinking about music?
Yeah, of course. As a writer, yeah. We always have ideas. I know several guys that, walking around, they're driving and they're singing melodies into their phone and cataloging them, and then when they get home, they're like, oh, I need a melody, and let me see what I have in my phone. I think, like, we all do that. All the good composers that I know in the city anyway, I'll just keep it right there, do that. So, yeah, we're always thinking about new music. I am. It's fun. That's the fun part.
Absolutely. Well, talk to me about the other projects that you're involved with. How do they shape your compositions?
Just by playing different music. Like, it might be, with this album, it was more of the role of keyboard and piano that I've been put in. Like, in a reggae situation, I'm not playing piano anymore. And then I'm not a very important instrument. And so what is the piano doing in that context? And he's doing, like, a bubble. I'm playing organ. I'm playing a lot of clav. I'm playing clav with wah pedal, I'm using delay, I'm using all this other stuff. And so then I like that sound. You say, oh man, I love that sound, I love what I'm doing. My heart's really in this other genre, like I try to bring that, like sonically. Like I'm using a lot of wah pedal with Rhodes. Especially like, I'm using a lot of delay, more, especially with our old albums, like the freedom of expression is totally clean, no pedals or effects. It's like a little bit of Rhodes. And then so when we started playing at Green Lady in the Live in Kansas City album, that's when I was floating all those bands too. We started bringing that into our jazz I started bringing that to my jazz immediately because I was having so much fun with it with the other bands. I was like, man, and then compositionally, the groove of reggae, the simplicity of it, like I don't think a person can be mad and listen to reggae. Like that's not the vibe of the music. And, on the other side of that, a lot of people say, oh, I don't like reggae because it's so simple and it's just the same groove over and over and over again. But that's to set a specific vibe. It's like you meditate to that in a way. And so it influences my music in different ways. I like playing in different situations and different groups, not just a jazz keyboardist. So
let me ask you this. How do you feel about the new generation of musicians in Kansas City, the new jazz generation that's here?
Man, Kansas City is incredible. Like, incredible. I don't know if we know how special it is. Like, we see it, but we don't really, we're living it, so it's different. But, man, like, everyone that I run into in Kansas City, all the guys that we just show up to jam sessions, and everyone can play. And it ain't just about playing. Like, the vibe is really good. Everyone, people are experimenting with music. They're writing incredible things. The young musician scene in Kansas City is really, really great. I like it a lot. Every time I travel, we come back and it's like, oh man, this is it's good to be home, Yeah, and there's more, I guess there's more of our friends moving here just to kind of sit in that vibe with us. But there's a lot of great things going on, and it's exciting. There's a lot of stuff that's on the horizon and projects from other people that, when those come out, I think it'll really change how people perceive Kansas City as a jazz city. Like I say, Kansas City is very nostalgic, and it's great to herald, the history and the foundation of jazz music in KC, because that foundation in jazz is the foundation for jazz around the world. It's the home of swing, Charlie Parker's from there, and Count Basie, and all these other great jazz musicians. And so you would ask, what does 2016 jazz sound like in Kansas City? And I think when you start listening to a lot of the younger groups like Project H and Electric Tink by Slam, and what Herman Mahari's doing, and what Matt Villinger's doing, and what Matt Otto's doing, and Jeff Harshbarger, and Brandon Draper, and, Rich Wheeler, and Liberation Big Band, all this stuff is so different, but it all has, a vibe of KC, a vibe of where we are, and it's really, really, it's great. I love it, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So when you leave and travel always has that magical way of kind of transporting you to a new place for a little bit. You get to kind of have that cessation, so to speak, from where you're from. How does travel add to you it obviously affects you as a person, but as a musician, how does it enhance who you are and your voice, especially as a part of this KC structure that we have?
You first get to experience what other musicians are doing regularly, in another place. I think that's the greatest thing about traveling. It's you get a different perspective of what's going on sonically, musically, especially as a keyboard player, keyboards. I was in LA and we were at the Blue Whale, which is a jazz type venue, and it was a keyboard-led group, and I'm mad I don't know the name. Dude wasn't even playing piano. Fender Rhodes, two Moogs, a Celeste, a Clav, they were, And so you get to see that, and you get to hear the music, and you get to meet different people, and that's the whole, the great thing about traveling. Second thing about traveling to me is then when you come back, you now see how that compares to where you are. For me anyway, I think about that first, the minute you get off the airport, the vibe is different. You've been sitting here for 2 or 3 weeks to a month, and you're oh man, now I'm home. how is it different? You know, or like maybe it's different. I want to do this, and it's just like, you know, I love traveling. It's a great thing. You like the whole change in scene and change in perspective enhances your ability. It enhances, you know, gives you a wider perspective. I see a lot of things differently about Kansas City now, as from a jazz musician, where a jazz musician stands from, opposed to like, you know, 1 year in LA, Chicago, New York, or some, you know, anywhere really. But it's great. I mean,
so what is the future of Eddie Moore in Kansas City and the beyond?
my future here is like kind of the same thing I'm doing. Definitely getting into teaching more. I think that's important. And I enjoy it a lot, actually. I want to live here. I'm going to live in KC. I feel just like to travel. And that's kind of, I think, what we're doing, like living in KC and traveling, like bringing what we're doing out to the people. That's my future, especially with being on Rope-A-Dope. We're trying to get on the road and just share that vibe that we have so much fun creating here and sharing with people here, sharing with other people around the world, and building a cycle of that and just doing more recording. I want to collaborate with more musicians and write more music and have more fun times and just keep that going. A lot of different interesting projects on the horizon, and that's the other great thing about traveling. It's like, man, I've never heard anyone play like that. Like, let's do something together.
Yeah, it's interesting. You were talking about what shapes your writing process and what's going on in America, which still shocks me. And I was thinking about 9/11 yesterday. I was in the back of a water taxi in Venice, and some dude was shooting his hands in the air. And I'm out vacationing. I landed in Paris, made my way to Italy, was getting ready to go to Cinque Terre, the poor man's Riviera, just in the middle of it, and all of a sudden it's, holy shit, what's going on? You know, and I call my dad. He's originally from Brooklyn, says the second tower fell. And I just started thinking, I was talking to someone about this today. When I was in Paris, the race relations and the way the vibe was there was phenomenal. No one got pent up. No one got weird. Everybody was just cool. They just did their thing. And I think,
right.
how did America have two successful, well-governed terms with Obama as an African-American? How the hell did we get to a point now where nitpicking Rosa to the back of the bus again? How did that happen?
Oh, man.
I don't get it.
Just from what I've seen, where my upbringing is really different. I grew up in the suburbs in pretty much an all Caucasian environment at a time, and then went to, you know, and then that drastically changed. So I've been on the extremes of both sides, and I think that's always been underneath America's, you know, and I feel the same thing that you experienced in Paris and Costa Rica for sure. I think it's lack of education. At the root of all of that is lack of education. And so you start to think about lack of education, where, how. And it's, I mean, the number, you know, I could be like, oh, well, this is just one man's opinion. But it's not. These are facts. The numbers show it, that in inner city schools where there's more diversity, the education is weaker in every city around the country.
Yeah.
You know, that's a problem. The resources aren't there. That's a problem. Like, all that stuff. And so even though we have a black president, the president isn't there to make change. He can only do so much. It's crazy to me that, you know, you got political gridlock because he's trying to make healthcare affordable. Yeah. People are complaining about that, but it's like, man, they have affordable healthcare in other countries in the world and it's working fine. Yeah. But it's because, you know, the history of what we do and the lack of education, like, on both sides. Like, that's what Kings and Queens is about. Like, African-American people a lot of us don't realize that we have a big hand in creating jazz music, which is a true American art form. And I know that because when I'm in the audience, I can probably count the African-Americans on one hand. They don't know they need to be there. You know, they don't know that they need to listen to this music because they have a big part of it. And on the other side of that, it's like Caucasians also are uneducated. We don't teach African American history, which is American history. Yeah. And therefore there's this thing the term that I've been hearing a lot called white privilege. And people are oblivious to that. And it's simple things like being able to go to the store and not get pulled over by the cops and get shot. Yep. Like, that's a real thing. Like, you know, I'm just sharing what I'm not giving my opinion. I'm just sharing what we all are seeing. And I think when we all talk about that and we all just, we learn about that and we say, man, this happened, this is horrible, and all the things that built this country, like our country's built on that relationship. Yeah. And I think that the people above and the government, you know, it's systematically built on that, and it systematically runs on keeping that relationship a certain way. Yep. And so that is why I feel in America we have that problem. And no matter what I hear, no matter what politician I see giving whatever interview, until they start talking about re-educating people, then it's never going to happen. You know, how do you change generations? It's like, quit just giving Huckleberry Finn as a reading requirement. Because there are things in that book, in these books that we're reading as kids, that set the tone for the relationship of white and black people. You know what I mean? At an early age. Like, and that's in every, you know, and I mean, I'm not saying that that book's not great. Like, that's cool to have that on there, but, like, you can't have that without having other text. You're totally right. You know, and it's for both sides. It ain't just for black people. It's not just for Hispanics. It's not, you know, we need to be learning about Asian cultures. Like, this is a country that invited all different races and diversities to come here and be free and create something, but you're not really free. You don't really have the power to create depending on who you are. You know, our education rules that. It's funny how we call it America. When we were in Costa, they were mad at that because America to them is North America, Central America, and South America. Yeah. You know, so when you say America, they're like, oh, well, we're a part of that too. And to a North American, it's like, no, you're not. Right. Yeah. You know, no, you're not. No, you're not at all. But it's like, yeah you are. No, I think that's it.
It's interesting, and I think the great thing about what you said up front about your music is art has always been a way of breaking free from all of the strangleholds that we always play into, which is the bullshit of the political environment in our country and everything else. Art goes right to the vein and makes some really good changes. And, you know, it's funny, I want to bring one thing up, too, about Randy Weston has to be one of the coolest cats I've ever had the privilege of speaking to. And at one point he said, Joe, I've been to Africa a lot, I've lived there, and he explained how jazz happened, and it to this day still brings hair on the back of my neck. He said, when you're in Africa, everything swings. Tails, trees, the people. That's how it happened. I mean, when he explained the beginning etymologies of jazz that came from Africa, it was a big, huge, massive red velvet curtain that was parted, and the yellow never looked as yellow. And it's so true, and we lose touch with how things begin. And if you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat it, and that's what we got to do. You know?
And we're totally repeating that now. Like, and I think people are like more oblivious to that than ever. Like, in a way, like I do see the change, and I see, you know. But then when you see something like, and I'm not, you know, when you see like something like, oh, well, all lives matter, not just black lives. It's like, but clearly you're seeing every day that like black lives don't matter as much as other lives matter. Like, bottom line, it ain't about anything else but that. And that's but that's the thing. And so it's not surprising when you see like a lot of people like Trump saying the things that he's saying and starting the. I mean, that's always been there to me. I grew up in Texas. Like I grew up in Texas, so like it's just that people don't choose to see it, and people. You know, racism and prejudiceness is something that's passed on. It's not something as a human being you're born with. And I see that in children. We'll be playing a corporate event, and they'll have kids there, and you see all these races of kids, dancing to jazz music. This music, they know what you're supposed to do to it just naturally. It's like, oh, man, this moves me, so I'm supposed to move, right? Why isn't anyone else moving? Yeah. And they're like 5 years old. And then they're all having fun with each other no matter what race they are, if that hasn't been changed for them at that age. Absolutely. You know, at some point in our education or in what's passed down from parent to child, that changes. Yeah. It's huge. And it's huge. It's huge. I grew up in Texas, so I've experienced that at, you know, some negative things in kindergarten, in first grade. And, you know, when you're too young to even know what those words mean and have that attitude towards other kids.
Yeah, you're totally right, man. You hit many nails on the head. But man, yeah, again, dude, thanks for taking some time out. Thanks for the album. Good luck with it. And
cool, appreciate it. It's good talking to you. Glad that you love the album, man. Thanks for doing what you're doing for the art and the music.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store, or visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.